The smell hit me first. The floors were caked in animal excrement. There was no running water, and until just a few days before, 3 children had been living in this house. 3 children under the age of 3. I tried to keep my composure, but I admit there was a few times where I swallowed a gag in my throat. This was 2 years ago in small town America. The hardest part was that this wasn't even the worst situation I found myself in. Doing what you can with what you have is often an ingrained value. And the desire to leave a positive legacy in our community, it's hardly rare. But very often the practical needs we have to pay our bills, to take care of our own families, and just to meet our own basic needs, push giving and service to our communities to the very margins. You know what? This makes sense. How can we give what we don't feel we have? But what if radical generosity could be built into the very fabric of a for-profit business? What if you could grow a for-profit business and make a substantial social impact? What if we could empower individuals, organizations, and companies as they make our communities better places to live? These were questions I found myself asking 2 years ago, but they have their origins in questions I've been asking myself and others for over 20 years. How do our values and our ideals survive contact with a world where we're very often naturally focused on just our own needs? At the time, I was living in New Mexico, a state that routinely ranks near the bottom of US statistics for high levels of child poverty, abuse and neglect, veteran housing insecurity, and educational outcomes. New Mexico is the 4th largest state geographically, and its 9,000 nonprofit organizations are stretched to their limits, both in terms of money and time. That nonprofits are strapped and worn thin is hardly a revelation to anyone involved in the nonprofit sector. I've been working as an executive director for a children's court services nonprofit, and it served 2 counties so large that it took 4 hours to drive end to end. I was also facing a move with my active duty military spouse, and I knew that working remotely just wasn't an option in my case. I felt torn. There are 1.5 million nonprofit organizations in the United States, and they spend $9 billion a year on professional services. What if they didn't have to spend that money? Could there be another way? Could there be a way to develop a for-profit business and still make a significant contribution to moving the needle for the young people that I've been working with? Before we talk why and how, let's talk definitions. A revenue model is a way of describing what revenue source to pursue, what value to offer, who's going to pay that value, and really it's the absolute foundation of what makes a business model work. For a business to succeed, its revenue model must be sound. An impact model refers to the way in which results are sought to achieve a significant positive change that addresses an immediate or urgent social challenge. For businesses to influence or assist in achieving a social impact, it requires a deliberate set of activities toward a goal. The goal might be defined by the business's mission, or it might be defined by the mission of the organization they're working with. Simply put, social impact models and revenue models are not the same, but they can work together to constitute a business model. University of Michigan have said that social impact is grounded in the effect it has on a pressing social challenge. But I have to admit, I'm being intentionally vague. And that's because what I consider to be an immediate or urgent social challenge is going to be very different, perhaps, to what you consider an immediate or urgent social challenge. It's likely to be heavily dependent on your local context. Sometimes, local or national challenges mirror global needs, but sometimes they run counter. So standard practice within the nonprofit community is to conduct a community needs assessment when it comes to establishing what a community needs, so establishing those pressing social challenges. For-profit businesses would benefit from examining the needs they intuit in their local community, whether a physical location or an affinity group. They can do this through research, statistics, or just establishing a consensus, which helps them decide what issues or topics they want to address, which needles they want to move. Ensuring human dignity and opportunity can be a good place to start. Early on, I developed a list of issues and areas I wanted to make a significant positive difference. And my list is going to look very different to your lists, and that's okay. The point is to set some guidelines for which projects to work on. The use of significant in our definition is intentional, and that's because ensuring human dignity and opportunity, for example, access to universal secondary school education for both boys and girls, requires deep structural movement of the status quo. This is what is referred to as moving the needle. So what's also apparent is that creative impact and revenue models are disrupting traditional ideas of the for-profit and non-profit divide, a divide that really largely exists because of the US taxation system. It doesn't exist in every country in the world. Using social impact to describe minimalist change is often criticized. But for-profit businesses who wish to have a social impact model that isn't merely virtue signaling or trifling around the edges, they must have a clear mission that integrates both the impact they want to make and a profitable revenue model. So ideally, it's about reflecting perspective with goals for significant shifts in society. So where do we go next? There have been over 120 social impact models that have been identified and documented by Matthew Manos. These are ways in which to operate a social enterprise. They include models like buy one, give one, made famous by Toms, providing jobs for a specific or underserved transitional population, like Rising Tide, which provides jobs for those with autism, or Mad Skills, an outsourcing company that connects military spouses with companies who are willing to allow them to work remotely. Recycling or upcycling, like Method, who takes plastic collected from the ocean and recycles it to create packaging for their cleaning products. And the one I eventually settled on, Give Half, or Give 50%. Over 50 revenue models have been identified. Examples of revenue models include free gift with purchase, free samples, freemium, e-commerce, B2C or business to consumer, and B2B, business to business. The last one is the one we chose. But what led me to even consider a social impact model as part of developing a for-profit business? I call this approach radical generosity, but it is at heart about aligning our work with our values. And I wondered perhaps if a formula might help us express this. So the sum of idealism and practicality to the power of community orientation multiplied by creativity equals radical generosity. Consider the woven fabric of a paper towel. The more interwoven it is, the stronger it is. In this approach, the idealism of believing that individuals can positively influence and impact their communities is interwoven with the practicalities of commerce and the time and money that can be multiplied. As time is given by service providers, it frees up lot of time and money that can be then used by those organizations to do something else. Much like the way that water expands and extends and impacts more of the paper towel over time. For example, say a nonprofit is looking for ways to communicate with their clients. A graphic designer may donate their time and create image collateral that they provide to the nonprofit with a license for them to use at no monetary cost. The nonprofit may then be able to improve their communications, attract more clients, impact more people, but at the same time, because they didn't spend the money on the graphic design services to start with, they have that additional money to be able to, say, communicate with their donors and obtain more community investment. The concept is simple. If you have time and skills and you offer those in a way that's strategic to an organization whose mission aligns with your values, then that time can be leveraged to further extend the organization's resources. Creativity is an important component in the radical generosity approach. And that's because it's through creativity that we identify ways to approach what revenue model to use, what social impact model to use, as well as deciding what skills to offer and the ways that we interact between businesses and nonprofit organizations. Community orientation, though, is where all of this finds its focus, and it's also the place where there can be the most exponential change. I don't believe that social impact has to be an afterthought or something that's tacked on to a business to fulfill some kind of social responsibility mandate. I believe that intentionally impacting our communities positively is often so divorced from the way we do business because we lack imagination to see how we can make it work in a way that aligns with our values. What we call radical generosity functions best when it's a grassroots approach. You can take a range of skills that you have, something that you can do well, and you can build a business. We've done this, but more than this, we've offered our services to nonprofit organizations pro bono, and we've had an impact that far exceeds the breadth and depth of impact I ever could have had trying to build another nonprofit organization from scratch. Now, I was experienced at that. I knew what that would take, and I still believe that the way we've approached this has been a better solution. So why 50%? What we found is that by working with a range of organizations, we are able to identify best practices and trends. We found that by approaching organizations with an attitude of telling them the truth, not just what they want to hear, we've been able to make a change to how things are done within the nonprofit sector. I've actually lost count of the number of times I've told people who've come to us and talked about starting a brand new organization that they should go and talk to another organization that has the same mission and work with them, collaborating and moving things forward. I've also lost count of the amount of organizations that I've told that they really need to diversify their funding streams because they're relying far too heavily on one source over another. This is where social enterprise can come in handy too. So maybe you could argue that we should have directed all our efforts to one project. But what we can do is serve as a catalyst and a multiplier for the work of a number of organizations across a portfolio of projects. Really? Why 50%? Because why not? Giving away half of your work and your time and growing a profitable business seems counterintuitive. Because you know what? It kind of is. We have a mission, though, to disrupt the thinking, both in terms of small business and the nonprofit sector. Giving away 50% of our time does, honestly, extend our growth timeline, because 50% of the work that we do that is paid has to cover 100% of our costs. But the truth is, it doesn't have to be 50%. It doesn't have to be a give half impact model to make a difference. As I mentioned earlier, there are over 100 social impact models that have been identified and documented. All I would challenge you to do is learn about the different models and see if there's a way, see what inspires you, see if there's a way to incorporate it in your own work. So how do we make this work? Let me dissuade you from thinking that this is just about feel-good, do-good stuff. Profit with a purpose, it's a recognizable concept, and there have been a number of talks from the TED stage that have addressed the concept. Because for any business to be sustainable, it must be based on a sound revenue model. It must be based on a sound business model. We have to serve our clients well. We have to deliver on time, on budget, and to a high standard. Using the list I developed earlier on, we have areas of interest where we are more inclined to work on a project. We work from our strengths to most effectively empower organisations to move the needle in both qualitative and quantitative measures. This isn't just about giving away time and stuff for free, just for the sake of it. I'm not looking to have just another logo on our website, okay? We vet every organisation we work with. We make them do a lot of work up front so we know that they've really bought in. Psychologically, this is about organisations seeing the cost so they value the result. We also need to have empowered them with the skills to leverage the work that we deliver and the time that we give them. We say no to more organisations than to whom we say yes. We value our work highly, which means no freebies for our customers, not even the pro bono ones. Our pro bono clients agree to a scope of work and they receive an invoice with a 100% discount. So how do we define success? For this, we have a modified formula. Let's take a look for a second. Idealism plus practicality to the power of community orientation multiplied by creativity equals momentum. Momentum is the desired result and the definition of success. We look at each project after time has passed to see if there's been any changes in the context of the community needs assessment. Significant change can take time to occur, so we don't just do it immediately following. For those that want to know about the money, we haven't yet reached $100,000 a year in revenue, but in the last 2 years, we've given away $75,000 worth of services. I'm only 2 years in. There will be more lessons to learn. So where do you start? For those that are service providers, consider incorporating a social impact model as you develop new forms of revenue. Because at the end of the day, this is about you finding ways to impact your own community where you are. So choose your own way. Find a way to be part of changing your community for the better.